present our scholarships to our recipients, as well as Randy Forrest is going to give us a presentation on sustainable gardening. So if you would please, just be sure your phones are silenced if you haven't already. And with that, we will go ahead with our first item, which is our scholarship presentation.
Good afternoon. I'm Sharon Seals of the Scholarship Committee, and I'm pleased to be here to introduce some very special and bright people today. The Scholarship Committee, with Diane Harden as our chair, also consists of Marianne Schnipper, and Dwight Bailey. Dwight, are you out there somewhere? I don't see Dwight. The committee, through publicity, our county agent, and school counselors, encourage future potential master gardeners in plant. Can't hear me? I'm going to move this so I don't fall off the edge. The committee, through publicity, our county agents, and school counselors, encourage future potential master gardeners and plant or agri high school and college students to apply for scholarships. We do our work from January till July with no dirt getting under our nails and with very little sweating. In this weather, that's important. It's a peach of a job, and we would welcome other master gardeners to sign up for this committee and work on this most worthy cause. Now on to business. There's a proverb that says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." And our organization has seen this proverb in action with the mentorship and guidance of two very special people, Janet Carson on the state level and Jean Licklider, a longtime volunteer in our program. I'm here today to represent the Scholarship Committee in awarding monies to young students who we hope will follow their example of mentoring and spread their knowledge back into our community. I ask that as I call your names, the scholarship recipients and their families stand for recognition, or even their support teams. Okay, I'd like you first of all to welcome Trinity Curtis. Trinity? Trinity graduated in May from Jesseville High School. She's enrolled in Southern Arkansas University in Magnolia, and she plans to study agriculture science with the goal of becoming an agriculture biologist. I'd also like you to meet William Aaron Humphrey. Aaron has successfully completed his first year at National Park College in Hot Springs, where he will continue this fall. After that, he intends to transfer to Southern Arkansas University in Magnolia in 2024, where he plans to study agriculture education so he can become a wildlife conservation biologist. Please also welcome Garrison Martin. Garrison has completed his first year at Southern Arkansas University in Magnolia, where he returns in just a few short weeks. He is studying agriculture education, and he is interested in becoming a county extension agent. I'd tell Luke Duffy to watch out, but I think that ship sailed. We also acknowledge Jessica Stringfellow, who can't be with us today. Jessica graduated from Lake Hamilton High School, and in the fall she will be going to Russellville to study biology at Arkansas Tech. She follows in the footsteps of her brother Brad, who received the Jean Licklider Scholarship in 2020, the first year it was offered by the Garland County Master Gardener Program. Congratulations to Jessica out there in the world. And now, before I turn you over to James Moore, I want to say to the three of you how dazzled we were by your application and by your accomplishments and your obvious dedication to all things botanical and biological and sciencey. It is our pleasure to offer these scholarships, as we know these investments in you will, in time, sharpen us in return. James?
first of all, I'd like to say good afternoon, my Master Gardeners, brothers and sisters. And it is a highly and truly pleasurable experience that I'm having in being involved in this Gene Lichlighter in providing for our students and applicants. Gene was a personal friend of mine. And when Diane called and asked me, she actually emailed me and said that she wanted me to be involved in this scholarship program. And that Miss Dorothy and Karen Lichlighter were the ones who recommended me to be involved in this scholarship presentation. And I just want to say thanks to Miss Dorothy and to Karen because of what they selected me to do. I'm very humble because I don't know what kind of impact I made on Gene that he would mention to Miss Dorothy, who was his wife, and to Karen about what I performed and what I did for him. And Gene was a true servant. He came to serve, and he did things for the Master Gardening program that he was just a lovable person, a person that you would love to be around, a person that you would love to adore, a person that you would look up to. And he's always had a very, very friendly smile. And I would have loved to be on the wall at Gene Lichlighter's house when he and Sister Dorothy discussed me. And not only myself, but I also would love to hear what he was discussing with also Jeff Finney, who was a very good personal friend of mine and a master gardener. When I first met Gene, it was at a meeting, I think, in November. And Gene got up and he asked for volunteers to work at a Habitat house. And even at that time, I was not enrolled. I had been accepted into the Master Gardening program because this was in November. But however, I had not had an opportunity to get started because our program started in January. So that morning, it was about 38 degrees, cloudy, overcast, foggy, moisture, all in the air. And at first, we went up to the two houses up on Wellington Avenue up there by the park. And we planted flowers and plants. And then after we did that, Gene asked us to lay sod. And you can imagine how we looked after we finished that project. And I said, do I really want to become a master gardener? So we really did have a very, very good time. And I have to say that Gene and I became brothers. And we respected each other and we loved each other. But that was a special relationship between Jeff and Gene. It was like a father-son relationship, like a big brother, little brother relationship, uncle, nephew. And a whole lot of times, Jeff would call me, and sometimes about 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. Ding, 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 ding. What you want, Jeff? Gene wants to do this. Gene wants to do that. And so one time I told Jeff, I said, I'm getting tired of you and Jeff. So, but whatever Gene wanted to do, we were happy to do what he needed. And then I didn't realize how Gene was trying to find someone to take over the chairperson and vice chair of the Habitat home. And I didn't realize how he and Miss Dorothy talked about trying to find someone to be that chair and co-chair. So again, Jeff called me one morning. I said, where are we going this time? And he said, I just had a conversation with Gene, and he wants to become chair and co-chair of the Habitat House. And of course, Jeff said he wants you to become chairperson, and I'll be vice chair. And I knew Jeff was telling the story. So I said, Jeff, you become the vice chair, and I'll be vice chair. And so that's how we got started as chair and vice chair of the Habitat Home. Also, I wanted to do a little research on Gene. And then I asked Yvonne Becker, who is a nice, friendly, humble, knowledgeable master gardener. And she gave me a few bullets on Gene. He said he was well known throughout the state, since he was asked to give educational programs, hosta or ornamental grasses in counties, and he did not, no matter where it was located, Gene was happy to go. That's a service. He was very active in the men's business, Garland Club, and persuaded members to help him with many of the projects in the village. He was one of the charter members of the Washita Hosta and Shade Society, and was the first president. He made hundreds of phone calls trying to get speakers throughout the years. Gene was a member of the Hot Springs Daily Society and the Hot Springs Irish Society. Gene did not use the internet, but Dorothy tried to keep him up to date on his messages, whether it was concerning the Men's Garden Club, the Hospice Society, or the Habitat for Humanity. Gene would be on the telephone the night before the event, reminding members to participate. And then I asked our executive director of Habitat as to how many houses did Gene perform or work on. It was interesting. Gene started in 1998 and 1999. And Gene worked on 132 houses. Wow. Now, that's a service. So one time, we had a Langston project, and we did about 4 or 5 Habitat houses within that community. So Jan Hodges, Jeff, and myself, we decided to design the project at Langston. So we went and got some encore azaleas, we got some crates, beautiful crates. We did a above ground irrigation system, and it looked good, but one thing was missing. We did not have Gene's approval. So we went and found Gene. We asked him to come by, look at the project. Gene came by, said, it looks good. They gave ourselves a high five and hugged each other. So when Gene became sick and he was unable to perform like he used to perform, Mrs. Dorothy would call me and said, well, Gene is coming to the meeting, and would you meet him there and help him get in and take care of him? I said, sure, Miss Dorothy, I'd be happy to do that for Gene. So I said, wait a minute, hold up. Let me go find some of the sisters of Master God and let them take care of Gene. And so Gene, when they came and got Gene, Gene was just as happy, and they took care of him, and it was all happiness there. And then one time, twice, and it was on 2 different occasions, Karen, who was Gene's daughter, and she had a caregiver, and they brought Gene in to the luncheon. And when it was over with, and that's on 2 different occasions, Karen said Gene would like to look at some Habitat houses. And then the caregiver said Gene would like to look at some Habitat houses. Now this is on 2 different occasions. I said, oh my God, I'm hoping these houses look good. So I took Gene to the Habitat house. He didn't want to walk, so he got out, looked around. He said, Jane, it looks good. I said, oh, thank you. And so it just, and even now, when we complete the Habitat houses, it's just a fun time. I get back, and after all the masters have left, I just look back at the Habitat houses that we just completed. And because of that spirit of Gene, the spirit of Jeff that is in me, then I just look and I asked him, I said, how does it look? And Gene and Jeff would say, looks good. Then sometimes Gene or Jeff would say, well, you missed something. You need to go back and straighten it out. So that's what I love to do. And then the last two occasions is that in the spirit of Gene, he used to talk to the individuals that were clients to get habitat houses. So I have made presentations about 2 or 3 months ago to people who are going to get habitat houses. And yesterday evening, I had a chance to talk to them about getting habitat houses. The main thing we're talking about is the plants and the shrub and the plants that we're going to plant, how to maintain the yard, how to weed, and how to do everything to keep that yard looking good. And I did this in the spirit of Gene. So again, I loved him. He loved me. He was a true servant. And his spirit is still within me. And I know the spirit is within some of the other master gardeners who work with Gene. So again, I want to thank you for allowing me to make this presentation about Gene. And he was always still within my heart. And again, thank you very much. I got my little gallery in the back, so I hope I did well. In fact, when I came up here, they said, oh, Lord. So now, I'd like to make presentations to our recipients. And I want to say, I hope that as you move forward, and I hope you remember the presentation that I made, that you, when you graduate from college, be like Gene and be a servant, okay? A servant is someone who comes to serve and not be served, okay? So this is what I'm asking, and I hope you remember that. So right now, Brother Trinity Curtis. Sister. Please forgive me.
It's okay.
Give me a little hood. I like that church. I hope all goes well with you. I love you, and you continue your education, okay? All right. Brother Garrison. I'd like to present you with a certificate and a little award from our Master Gardener. I hope all goes with you. And remember, I always study, and we're looking forward to you come back. And last but not least, Brother Aaron. Okay, Brother Aaron. Thank you, brother. And all will be well. I'd like to present this certificate to you. And I want you to continue your education, graduate, come back to Master God and say, hey, I made it. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I like it. Again, thank you very much. Everybody have a blessed and beautiful day. And one other thing, Sharon and I have been on our best behavior for the last week. So now we're going to be able to go back to our normal self.
Thank you, James. But now the gloves come off. We would like to invite the families to stay with us for our business meeting, but several of you have expressed that you have some other things to do. So we're going to let you guys go if you want to, and turn this over to our program for the day. You're welcome to stay, but you're also, don't be embarrassed if you have to go.
Okay, next up is our program for today, Randy Forrest. Most of us know Randy already. He's spoken for us several times in the past. He's going to speak to us on sustainable gardening. Before becoming our Chief Master Gardener Guru, Randy served several extension agent positions in agricultural extension agent in St. Francis County, extension agent staff chair for Carroll County, and staff chair for Pulaski County. When not traveling the state, working with Master Gardener groups, or presenting very entertaining and educational talks, Randy manages his own farm just outside Little Rock. So today, Randy's going to speak to us on sustainable gardening, and you should have his handout in your chair. Randy?
All right, thank you. Is it going to go to slide 3? See if I can get it. Well, it's a big mouse.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Okay, can y'all hear me? Okay? Or do I need this mic?
Yes.
I do need this mic. Am I able to carry this mic?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm a mover and shaker. All right. So, first of all, Garland County, condolences because Luke left us.
Yes.
He called me 2 weeks ago and told me, and I said, my God, you have abandoned me again. Because y'all are hosting conference this coming year, and there's a lot going on. And that reminds me, Trisha's not going to be here. I don't want to give you an update on conference. So thank goodness they are hosting, and I'm not worried because, Garland County is so organized. And they're really ahead of schedule. They're doing everything by the book. So right now, we actually been touring beautiful gardens here in Hot Springs. I mean, amazing gardens. And we're actually going to be touring a couple of more after the program's over today to see how well they're going to fare on our deal and actually break them apart. But also, Claudette, where are you? How's sponsorship going? Good? Great, huh? she's in charge of sponsorship, and she's doing a great job. Plus, she's also in charge of the vendors for the plant people, the trade show. So I guess she knows how to handle that because she's handled y'all's in the past. So I'm not worried there one bit. So again, you are doing a great job, and I guess they haven't done volunteers yet, because we don't know how many volunteer workers we're going to need. And so it takes a lot to put this on, and you are going to be hosting 500 people, so you'll be bringing 500 people into the area. So again, I know a lot of Master Gardeners across the state are all looking forward to it, and they cannot wait for us to get registration out there, which is a good thing. So they're all excited, and I'm sure we're going to have a full house. So thanks again for that. Also, I have I have a small farm. And I raise sheep. I have 80 acres, and I have 105 mother breeding ewes. That's the female sheep. And some of y'all might have heard this if you heard of MGM. But my sheep lambed 6 months ago, and then I don't have them lambing again till like October. Well, the sheep are on one pasture. I have a milk cow called Daffodil, is another pasture. I was feeding my sheep sweet alfalfa hay in this field, and she got the bright idea because I wasn't giving her any. She knows how to undo the latch. She left 2 rams in there with my ewes. They were going like crazy, and I was trying to get them out of there, but a week ago, I had 43 baby lambs in one day. They hit the ground running, and that was all in about 45 minutes to get them out of there back in their pen. So I was cussing my Daffodil Jersey milk cow, and now I have baby lambs running around everywhere. So hopefully I don't have any more surprises when I get home today. So, is this mine, y'all? I think, okay, thank you. Okay. So, also, they want to remind you that spurge has been hitting y'all's lawns lately. Everybody's having spurge. Cross-state spurge, it goes flat, cross-straight. So y'all know on the treatment on that, it's gonna be, metsulfuron will be a good treatment for it, but I have to caution you, metsulfuron's the active ingredient. That's gonna be sold under Manor, Blade, and Mansion. Do not, when you're spraying your lawn, get that in the root zone of your trees, because it's an herbicide. It will affect your trees. So yeah, if your lawn doesn't have any trees in it, great, go for it. But if there's a tree in that lawn, make sure you stay away from the canopy line if you're using it. There's other products out there, but they're not going to give you a good enough kill. The next thing is, if you're going to do this, do it before that thing flowers. Look close. It's going to flower right in the crotch angle of those limbs, and they're going to be tiny. If it's already flowered, remember, it's already set seed bank for next year. So if it's got flowers on it, you're going to have this problem again next year. So you might want to catch it early when you're doing it. So be on the lookout for that. There's other products out there. I was telling him, I handle it in my turf. I get the little paint roller, the little short one. I roll it in glyphosate. I know some of you might not like glyphosate, but it will kill it. And I just roll it on the top of it, and I kill it that way. It works. But there's other ways you can manage it too. But again, or you can hand pull it if you have time to do that. It's not that difficult to pull up. So that's another way of handling it. Okay, today we're going to talk about sustainable gardening, and most of us probably are doing it. We just don't realize it. So I noticed, where's Sheila? Sheila? Oh yeah, and then Terry, she brought her better half, Terry, with her, and he showed me his garden. I couldn't believe it. He's not even a master gardener. His garden is amazing, and it's huge. What do you do with all that produce?
Give it away.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. It's unbelievable. Now how come he's not a master gardener, Sheila?
I have no idea, because he's fishing every time.
Oh, okay. okay. Well, good job. Those pictures look great. But we're going to talk about sustainable gardening. So, sustainable. The simple message about sustainable gardening is do as little harm as possible, and nature will reward you. So, that we have to consider all things. So, when growing food, we have to remember we do not want to cause destruction to the land, the air, and the water. These are very critical. And so we know how important those are for growing plants. So the goals of sustainability is to preserve what we have, conserve what we have, maintain, and also nourish the ground. So how is the garden sustainable? If you're growing your own food, you're already doing it already. So, you're decreasing that carbon footprint. So think about it. If you're growing your produce, you're not going to the grocery store getting produce, or you're not having a trucker send in produce. If that's how you're buying it. So this is one way to do it. And I mean, that could be something as a simple tomato plant. Because, tomatoes are one of my favorite vegetables / fruits, depending on how you want to classify it. But it's a great one. I mean, I actually grow my garden in protein tubs. I'm actually recycling, so I'm actually doing it. But protein tubs are these tubs that cattle and sheep lick out of. Gosh. But anyway, they empty them, and they're about this tall and about this big around. And I drill holes in them, and that's how I grow all my produce. Eggplant, tomatoes, cucumbers, everything is in those protein tubs. It's easier for me to garden that way. Plus, those protein tubs are on top of a concrete slab. I don't have to worry about weeding around it or anything like that. I'm not using energy, wasting gas, or anything to do that because I'm planning for that. The only thing I plant in the ground is actually okra, because I have a long row of it, or corn. They don't really seem to do well in a tub, or if I do them in a tub, I have to have many, many tubs to get enough corn or okra. So I still plant those in a row. So again, that's what I'm thinking about when I'm gardening. And then, there's going to be less food waste. So you imagine when they're hauling stuff in, they're going to get damage on produce. So there's a lot of produce that goes to waste. But if you're growing it yourself, you're picking it fresh. Plus, the difference between a fresh tasting tomato out of your garden versus one out of the grocery store. I mean, to me, it's like eating cardboard when I'm getting tomatoes out of I don't even buy them. I just don't like them. I love fresh tomatoes. Now, in the wintertime, I will resort to the little Tommy Toes in the wintertime. They have a better flavor. So again, and we all know how more nutritious the food is that you're growing out of your garden. So starting a sustainable garden, plant ahead and also plan ahead. So in the soil, the dirt is free, and we want to manage that soil. Soil is very important. If we do not have a good soil structure, we're going to have a few failures. Also, raised beds. Now, I'm all for this. I don't know if any of y'all garden raised beds, but it's easy enough to do. Once it's established, and I can consider my protein tubs as a raised bed because they're up about 18 inches. So it works out too. But with anything raised, it dries out more quickly. So you're gonna have to think about the moisture part of it. With this high heat, I'm having to water my tomatoes are about 7 feet tall and about 3 feet across. And they use that moisture. The last 3 days I've been having to water in the morning before I go to work and then water when I get back because that root system, and again, it's only one tomato plant in there, but that thing is full of roots. They're transpiring. They're releasing that water just like we are sweating, and they're doing it all the time. So it's very important that we make sure that moisture content's there and it's evenly distributed across the plant. Because if a plant starts wilting, you've already decreased yield. So we don't want to stress it out. When a plant starts wilting, when it stresses out, its immune system goes down just like us. If our immune system goes down, it opens up for disease. So we have to think about the plant and keep it healthy. Containers, again, that's how I guard majority of my garden, and it works out great. But again, they will dry out quickly. So the benefits of raised bed is the height, for gardening. As I get older, I don't bend as well, or my back hurts. So I love that. Also, it's an alternate to poor soil. So if you have poor soils, you can amend that soil and build it up. It's a place to sit, which I do like now. I can sit on the edge. I don't know, have any of y'all been to the demo garden in Little Rock at the 4-H Center? We have Pulaski County Master Gardeners have a demonstration garden there. It's all out of raised timbers. They are cedar timbers, which are great. They're 6 inches across, and they're high enough for you to garden. And they love it because they can actually sit on the edge of those timbers and garden. Less weeds. There's less weeds in raised bed gardening. Now, I have to caution you, do not put your raised bed gardening out in the middle of a Bermuda grass yard. Bermuda grass is the antichrist for any vegetable garden. It will crawl under, it will crawl over, it will get into the beds. So if you're doing it, plan for that. You need to address that because it will take over, and I hate that stuff. Now, other than my pastor, I hate it in my garden. So the raised bed cons, okay, temperature changes, moisture, we all know that. The cost, but the thing is, once it's done, it's there. And if you're using a pressure treated or a cedar or a cypress or those are 3 of them that we mainly use. It's going to hold up for a long time. And the reason we use cedar in the demo garden is we're expecting that to be there for 20 plus years. Now, if we do pressure treated, we might get 7 to 10 years out of those timbers. But still, again, it's not, we're getting a lot for what we're putting into it. Near a water source, very, very, very important. So when you're planting anything, garden-wise, you know how important water is. We don't want to be dragging that hose around. This high heat is awful. I spend 2 hours every night watering just my containers, vegetables, plus my flower pots. So again, it takes a lot. So make sure that water source is close by. Also, proper light, very, very important. As master gardeners, we know for vegetable growing, we need that 6 to 8. If we're not getting that 6 to 8 hours minimum, we're going to have elongated nodes in our plants. And you as master gardeners know what I'm talking about. That joint between the joints, that space between it. If they're elongated, they're going to be longer. They're going to lodge over. They're going to fall over. And when that happens, anything that comes in contact with the soil, it opens up for more disease. So these are things that you need to consider. Again, I was talking about the wood that you could use in these raised beds, cedar, locust, pressure treatment. Now again, don't worry, the pressure treatment, they used to use arsenic way in the past, but now it's copper sulfate, so you don't have to worry about the arsenic levels in it anymore. We do not encourage railroad ties because of that, the creosote in it. But a lot of people do use them, and they're using those weathered ones where the creosote is already weathered out. But again, if we're doing construction from the new, there's other materials out there I prefer to use. Brick, stone, cedar block, I've seen it all the way. We have a community garden in South Little Rock, and all the raised beds are out of concrete blocks. Somebody donated to them, and they actually used them to make the beds. If you're going to do that, I encourage you to have a stable footing underneath those blocks. Ground shift, they rotate, they swell, they shrink. So you'll get that unevenness of it. But again, if you're going to do a block or a stone, it's very important that you have the footing underneath that to hold it in place. Plastic lumber is available now, and a lot of people are taking plastic recycling and turning it into lumbers that you can actually, have you seen the raised beds made out of plastic, the lumber they sell for it? They will last a while. Glad they're made out of recycled material. So that's one way we're thinking about, okay, what can we do with all this plastic that's in our landfill? So, easy accessible, close to a kitchen. My herb garden is right there by the kitchen back door, because when I'm cooking, I don't want to have to go to South 40 to pick produce or pick herbs. I want it there, and I want it fresh. So it's right there at the back door. It's also close enough to my grill too. So I'm actually picking fresh when I'm cooking. Okay, appearances and views. So most of us as gardeners, you know, we do a pretty good job as master gardeners keeping up our gardens so they look pretty good. But we have a lot of newbies that really, you know, they think, oh, I want to raise a garden. They start out strong at the beginning. But when July and August hit and that heat hits, they forget it and they let it go wild. So that's when they get weeds and grass and stuff coming into it. So again, make sure if that's going to be the case, you have that where it's not visible from the street. Because otherwise you might have if you have a strict ordinance, they're going to be sending you a fine or putting something on your door saying, okay, you need to do something with this mess. Okay, again, access to water, pay attention to it. And then we all have the problem with deer. Now, I'm very fortunate that my Pyrenees dog that guards the sheep will not allow deer on the property. They don't want anything near the sheep. And especially since they have babies now, they go into Cujo mode. They are unbelievable when they have babies. They just don't want anything near them. The only problem I have at the 80 acres is, you know, coyotes are a predator of rabbits. The rabbits because the rabbits and coyotes, you know, they keep them down. Well, coyotes are not allowed on the 80 acres because the dogs keep them off. Well, all the rabbits in the countryside are on my property and breeding like crazy. And here's what's funny. The dogs are out there guarding the sheep. They lay on the hillside. The rabbits are all around them, playing on them, jumping on the dogs, jumping over the dogs. And I am fuming because I can't stand them. They cause so much destruction. But anyway, I have my problems, and I'll have to think of a way to get rid of them. Okay, how much sunlight? We know 6 to 8 hours direct sun is what we need. Warm season crops, we know tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, cucurbits, all of them require that heat, that light for them to produce. So very, very important. Now for cool season, you can limit that because cool season, especially in central Arkansas where we get hotter than the 80s sometimes, we know how important it is for you to have a cool period for those root crops, those carrots, those radishes, those onions, those lettuce. Again, if it's on a cooler side, you can actually get them to produce. So again, do that. Also, our cool season vegetables, you can actually in a raised bed start starting them early in it because the soil's worked up. You actually cool down the soil a little bit because for cool season crops, it means that the soil has to be cooler for it to germinate. We all know that if you put a cold crop into warm ground, it will sometimes cause it to bolt, go flower, and you're not going to get your broccoli or cauliflower. You're going to get a whole bunch of yellow blooming flower stalks. Great for pollinators, but you're not going to get what you need to eat. So again, think about that. Size. Think about this. Be realistic. Start small because, you know, we all want to go big at first, but there's a lot of labor going into managing a garden. Now, I myself don't consider it labor. I consider it therapy for me. I garden for therapy, and it's a stress reliever. But for a lot of people, it's not. It's a chore. So think about that when you're planning your area. Rotate, orientate east to west. Also think about when you're trellising something, is it going to shade what you have? Like a lot of people don't realize, okra gets tall, it gets big, it casts a lot of shade. So if you have something on the small side of it, on the back side of it, it's not getting that sun that it needs. So think about that. Corn, another thing, it will shade. So really think about that. Also, if you're planting perennial crops in your garden, make sure that you're putting them in a place that they're going to be there for a while. Like my parents' asparagus bed is 30-something years old. It's been around for 30-something years and it's still producing. So again, we're not moving that asparagus, it is there for life. Those of you raising blackberries or raspberries or anything like that, we know, or strawberries, that's pretty much a perennial plant in our garden. And wherever we plant those, that's where they're going to be. So you need to think about that when you're planting it. Also, I would choose putting perennials on one side and the garden on the rest. So again, do that. But also, you can also do succession planting with that. You could use the benefit of that shade. And right here you can see corn with lettuce. You know, lettuce will get bitter if it's getting hot. I don't know if y'all have ever tasted bitter lettuce. It's not that tasty. But you can actually grow it beside corn and actually let the corn shade it to where it's not going to have that bitterness in it when it's growing. Other plants and landscapes. So stay away from trees. We all know about the tree roots. So when I say tree roots, a lot of people don't realize the critical ones, the ones that are sucking up the water, are on the canopy edge. It's way out there on the canopy edge, not near the trunk. So think about how wide that tree is. That's where those roots are going to be. That's the ones going to be sucking up the water. If you have a river birch, I suggest keeping your vegetable garden away from a river birch. It will suck it bone dry. It loves water. So black walnut, if you have a black walnut anywhere near it, black walnuts have a toxin, a leopathic thing. They ooze out. So only certain things can grow under a walnut, and without it causing problems. So again, it will leach out, so you could have issues there. So think about that. Soil. Soil is going to be your key. It needs to be well managed and well nourished. And then you want to constantly be feeding this soil to continue for it to be healthy. Healthy soils grow healthy plants. And if we don't start out that way, we're going to have problems at the very beginning. So we need to think about that. Also the slope, how's the water running, if you're gardening in the ground, of course. And you all know as master gardeners that we have that free source of soil testing. I would encourage you to use it. It's going to tell you where you are to begin with, what are your nitrogen, your phosphorus, potassium levels are. Very important to know your pH. That's like medication. If your pH is out of whack, it's kind of like if your medication's out of whack, we don't do so well. So again, pay attention to that. And if you're going to lime, lime is a natural bicarbonate that we use to raise the pH in our garden, because most of our gardens want to be in that 6 to 7 range. So we're actually using that lime. So if you're using lime, make sure you plan on doing it 3 months ahead of time, because it's going to break down to actually help change that pH. Fertility, again, check that. We need to know plants need nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium to grow. Okay, when you're preparing this soil, now here's the deal, tilling is not a good thing. It's actually breaking down the soil. Plus, you're drying it out. And I had a hard time telling my dad growing up. We had an acre garden, but he would till between the rows. That's how we kept it clean. And it was constantly tilling. So you can imagine if you're tilling, there's going to be a pan layer right beneath that tilling blade. And that pan layer is going to be a hard layer. And that, whatever the tine width or diameter of your tiller, there's going to be a pan layer down. That's going to be a hard compact. It's not letting the moisture go through. So if I'm doing it sustainably, I'm probably going to till one time just to get it to where I need it, because I need to prepare the soil. But then after that, I'm depending on me keeping that soil up, me keeping that friable with just minimum work, no tilling. I'm keeping me making sure that I'm not going to develop a pan layer, because when the roots are growing, the deeper those roots can get, the better off your plant's going to be. So also, do not work wet soil. It's like making bricks. So again, it's very critical that you're not out there working in that wet soil. Make sure it's nice and friable before you start messing with it. Add organic matter. I can't stress enough how important this is. On my tubs, I'm going to tell you about crop rotation on too, but on my tubs, I'm actually putting organic matter on them every year. So 6 inches go in November for me, because in my tubs, the soil it just naturally shrinks. So I'm filling them up with compost, and I'm very fortunate to have sheep manure, chicken manure, cow manure, so I've got all kinds of manure. So I'm actually full of manure. But anyway, I'm actually using those in my containers, and it works out really well, because when I'm planting in the spring, I just till it in, and that suffices. My plants look great. So again, pay attention to that. Also, your soil test, as I mentioned before, is like a record. It's going to tell you what your NPK levels are at all times, and it's also going to tell you what your pH is and where it is and where it needs to be. Anybody grow blueberries in here? Oh, wow. Okay. We know how critical it is to have that blueberry range in that 4.5 to 5 point range. So we know that we have to constantly keep an eye on that, just so we do that. If you're going to plant blueberries, we also suggest you do that a year in advance, making sure the ground is ready to go, making sure that pH is where it needs to be before you actually plant your blueberry. And the reason for that, it's going to save you a lot of problems in the long run, because you're going to get a lot of things happening to your blueberry, and you think, well, what kind of disease is this? And it's not really a disease, it's just the pH is not at the right level it's supposed to be at. Because if it's not there, it's not allowing that plant to draw up what it needs. So it could be just sitting in the soil, but it's not, the plant's not taking it in. So very, very critical that blueberries, you know how to do that way ahead of time. Plan your pathways. Again, we want to avoid compacting the soil. Compaction is not good. So you're going to have pathways in your garden. So those of you who are not doing raised beds, you know, usually raised beds are about 4 feet across, because you could easily access 2 feet on each side. And so they'll have a pathway around that. But again, if you have a big garden, you're going to have to put something like a brick or maybe a mulch pathway. And those are going to be your pathway with the line for the garden. Inside that area, you're not packing that down. You're only working it with a shovel or a hoe or something just to slightly till it. You're not putting a tiller in there doing it. Also, again, very important that you're able, whatever raised bed you're doing, you're able to harvest from both sides. We don't want you crawling in the middle of that bed doing that. Picking produce or pulling weeds. Compost. Who in here compost? Thank you. I compost everything. Well, I don't do meat scraps, but I compost nearly everything. And I have it close to my garden. It is right there. So when I'm hauling that compost, now I do not turn it like I'm supposed to every week, but I do turn it and I do water it for moisture. And that if I stayed upon, doing it all the time, I would get more compost sooner. But with my schedule, it only allows me to do certain things. But I do have it there. I'm composting everything. All my vegetable scraps, all my chicken eggs, shells, coffee grind, everything is composted in there. I don't throw anything in the landfill. That can be composted. And that goes back to sustainable gardening. Use whatever you can. And it breaks down and it works great. And that's what I use in my garden. So it's right there. I just shovel it into my containers and it's ready to go. So again, we all know the benefits of compost. A lot of people might use their compost as a mulch for their garden, which is great. You can. There's nutrients in it. There's always a building up the organic matter every year. It also increases the filtration. We know how important drainage is in a garden. It also increases the nutrient holding capacity. So if you're putting out your organic fertilizers, nitrogen, if it's not used immediately, it's leached out, or the plants will use it, or it's atmospherically, they use it. It's dispersed. But with potash and potassium, with phosphorus and potassium, it's banked in the soil. So whatever you put on phosphorus or whatever you put in the soil for potassium, it is there until the plant uses it. It's unlike nitrogen. So that nitrogen is going to be leached, but we want to make sure that if we're composting it and we're tilling that compost in, we've got that nutrient holding capacity there. It's there for the plants to use when they're ready to use it. And that's very, very important. Also, compost, a lot of people think compost is a fertilizer. It is not. It has a little bit of nutrients in it, but it's really a soil amendment. And we have people that try to plant, and we get calls all the time saying, I went to the Super Soul place and got a whole load of compost, and I plant directly in it. There's not enough nutrients in it for plants to live. Plus, it's not going to hold up the plants. They'll plant it and they'll start drying out in 2 or 3 days. So again, make sure you know the difference and you're doing it. But it will feed the soil. I do compost every year. I'm constantly building up my soil. I'm constantly feeding that soil. So I actually apply it early enough, and then I build it into the soil when it comes on to planting. So what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. So again, compost, compost, compost. Natural fertilizers is sustainable gardening. They're leaning away from the commercial ones because natural is supposed to be better, which it does. It does a great job. Animal manures, which I have plenty of. Fish emulsion, which I know a lot of my master gardeners in Pulaski County use a lot of fish emulsion. Worm castings. Do we have anybody that does worm castings in here for their garden? Great. Claudia, do you have a worm bin by any chance? Okay, I didn't know if you grow your own or what. So again, also liquid kelp, seaweed, there's a lot of things on the market. Alfalfa meal, high in nitrogen, green manure crops, so the cover crops you're growing in your garden and you're tilling them in. You're building them up from green manures instead of animal manures. But here's the thing I have to caution you about, and this is the reason why you need to know about your soil test. It's going to tell you your nitrogen levels, your phosphorus levels, your potassium levels. The organic fertilizers are not going to have usually a high level of nitrogen. The only one you have to worry about is fresh chicken litter, and I have that. You can burn up a plant because it's really straight ammonium nitrate. So caution you, when I clean out my chicken house, it goes on top of a concrete slab. It's composted there for 6 months. Then I use it just so I don't prevent them burning the plant with that high nitrogen source. But usually with the other livestock, you're not going to get that. You're not going to get like high nitrogen with cow manure. You're definitely not going to get with sheep manure. I use a lot of it, and I can put sheep manure out as a top dressing, and the earthworms are up into it the next day. They love it. So it's not got that high uric acid to actually burn that casing on that earthworm. So again, they'll usually go down for a while if you're using straight chicken litter, because they'll come up when it's actually leached out a little bit. Okay, so here's the thing I have to caution you. If you are using manure, and you might know somebody has a horse farm or something like that, you go over there and get horse manure, which a lot of people do, I have to caution you. They need to know, they feed hay to horses, and it's usually a clean hay. Bermuda grass hay is usually what they want. Farmers grow a lot of that hay because they can make more money off selling baled hay to horse farms because it's premium. So to do that, horses have a simple stomach, not a ruminant like cows, sheep, and goats, and deer. But they have a simple stomach, so they cannot have a lot of weed, trashy stuff in their hay. It has to be clean. So they're actually using like a graze-on product in their hay fields to keep that hay clean, just so there's no broadleaves coming up in it. The only bad thing is, in those two products, the Graze-On and Graze-On Prowl and HL, there is an herbicide active ingredient called plychlorum, and it actually, when that livestock eat it, when they urinate, it's still there. Or when they defecate, it is still there. So if you're buying or using that horse manure, and that horse is eating that hay, which you don't know where it's coming from, because you can ask the farmer, is he treating his pasture with what? If it's a 2,4-D product, it's okay. If it's a Graze-On or Graze-On HL product, no, because of that. Otherwise, you're going to burn up everything in your garden. You're going to kill the plants. And it's going to be 2 or 3 years before you can actually grow in that again. So I caution you, if you're using that horse manure, just know where that stuff is coming from and where they're getting their hay. Okay, so on organic manures, we're actually spoon feeding them. We're doing it more often. We can, because we're not to worry about burning, and that really works. Like at JDC, which is our juvenile detention center that I used to work with the master gardeners, we use fish emulsion quite a bit. And we could do fish emulsion at least once a week or every 2 weeks. The plants love it. But it smells bad, y'all. Oh my God, do not get that on you. It takes 2 weeks to wear off. Nobody will sit by you at church. Nobody. It is awful. Oh, it smells bad. But it does a great job. It greens up everything pretty quick. So again, take that in consideration when you're doing that. Oh, it stinks. Okay, when it comes to garden pests, we're hitting the garden pests now. Garden pests love this heat. So I tell people, and this is what I do. I go through my garden, I try to get out there every day, and usually it's in the morning with the heat. But I'm looking at those plants when I'm going through. I'm lifting the leaves because the pests don't usually stay at the top. They're underneath for protection. I'm looking at those leaves and looking for either the adults or I'm looking for eggs. If I see them, I try to take care of them immediately. Squash bugs are running rampant now. I hate them. They're breeding like crazy. But my thing is, when I see an adult squash bug early on, I pick it off and smash it. I do it. Because here's the bad thing. If you do an organic spray on it, first of all, it just washes off the back of the adult squash bug. Doesn't affect them. They just look at you and laugh. But it doesn't stop them breeding either. They'll lay thousands of eggs. So when I see those adults, I just pick them off automatically and do it. It works on the new young stuff, the new young pest. It's also will do a good job of that. But try to prevent it from happening in the first place. And I know I'm going to have to be there. Anybody raising a vine squash, like a pumpkin or a vining squash in here, winter squash or anything, are you having a problem with vine borer yet? Okay, so that squash vine borer is the one your plants look healthy one day and the next day you come out and a section's wilted. Well, you're thinking, what's happening? Is it a disease? No, it's a squash vine borer. Look at the base, it's in there tunneling. And it's tearing up that xylem, which we all know is the water-producing conducting tissue, and it's racking it up so the plant's wilting. So yeah, usually you can dig in there and find it and kill it, which is what I do because I don't want it breeding again in the future. So I'm taking care of it immediately. But With that, you can actually, unless you have thousands of them planted, in my tubs, when they first come up on all my squash and all my pumpkins or my winter squash, when they come up and right below that cotyledon leaf, I'm wrapping foil around that area because when that, it looks like a wasp. She's flying around, she's laying her eggs. She lays her eggs right there at that area, about this far up. She's laying eggs. Well, if you lay it on foil and it hatches, it can't penetrate. So it works out great. I don't have to worry about that. So again, there's things around that you can do to stop that. Also, when you're doing IPM, which is Integrated Pest Management, you're working with Mother Nature. You know, there's a lot of beneficial, we call it good bug, bad bug situation. So first of all, you need to know what bugs you are dealing with. Some of them look really ferocious, but they're actually a good bug. And they're actually doing their job. Lady beetles are one. Have you ever looked at a baby lady beetle? It looks nothing like its mother or its dad. It looks like a little prehistoric dinosaur. So again, and the reason I love them, and you need to know what they look like, because they're eating twice as many aphids as the adults. So they're a growing teenager. So they're going crazy on those aphids. So if there's enough of those out there, you don't have to worry about treating for that aphid problem because you have enough of good bugs, larvae out there taking care of the problem. Also, know your parasitic wasp that are flying around, because have any of y'all had a tomato hornworm with little rice pods, you think, all along the back? Have you ever seen that? It looks kind of creepy. Well, that's a good on your finger, but it's not. It's just that little feet do that. But again, pick them off. I picked 27 off my tomato 2 days ago. It's amazing. They just go crazy, but I had pleasure giving those to my chickens to eat. So that wouldn't be it. They loved it. So, but anyway, do that. Hand pick them off because it's a way of not having to have to spray for it, and you're doing a good job. If you don't, your poor tomato plant's going to be defoliated by the time you get home from work that day. So look for that. And also, there's a lot of stuff out there that we can treat with bio, like Bacillus thuringiensis is an organic treatment that we use for caterpillars. There's those things out there that we can use that is organic enough to use that we've used to take care of the problem if we have to do it. So again, scout first. Then go through it and keep the levels down. Now, I wish I could say I was strictly organic, I'm not. When August gets here, the spider mites will go rampant. And they're hitting, y'all know how to check for spider mites, right? You take that white sheet of paper underneath, and I'm going to use tomatoes, for instance. You take the white sheet of paper, put it underneath the limb of your tomato, tap it, get out your bifocals or magnifying glass, and you'll see them slowly crawling around. They need to be addressed immediately because they will get out of hand. You can do insecticidal soap, which is labeled for organic use, but you're going to have to do that every day. Sometimes with my schedule, I don't have time to do it. If you miss a day, it doesn't matter. You're going to have thousands. So I'll have to resort to a chemical treatment on them just to control it. And then I have to make sure, like if it's on tomatoes, whatever you're using, if you have to resort that, pay attention to withdrawal. So for instance, I would have to use malathion because my tomatoes are coming off every day or every 2 or 3 days I'm picking. That way I know it's safe to eat or pick and then wash them, of course, if I have to resort to that. But you can do it with insecticide soap, but you have to stay on top of it and use it. And you need to be spraying underneath those leaves and on top, not just the top, because they're underneath the leaves sucking that chlorophyll out. So again, your tomatoes will get yellow, bronzy look in just in a day's time. And that when you know that you have a severe infestation and you need to take care of it immediately. Okay, companion planting. So on companion planting, we get this question all the time. I want to program on companion planting. Well, which way you want to go? Because there's trap crop companion planting, and there's also ones you plant that you can mix with your vegetable that's going to help them. So that y'all know what a trap crop is. It's something that you know that pests love. You know, you're planting something on the edge of your garden that they love more than what they want to eat on. Like, anybody grow eggplant in here? Oh, yeah. 1 eggplant's enough for a family of 7 because it produces a lot. I picked 27 off of my eggplant. I just have 1. And I give my food to Sisters of Charity, extra food, because they feed the poor every day. It got so bad last year that the Sisters of Mercy said, no more eggplant for 2 weeks. The poor just doesn't like it. There's too much eggplant. They said no. So again, flea beetle attacks eggplant. The little holes in the leaf is that flea beetle. So you're going to plant something over on the side, and it could be, they usually like a luscious, you can plant a green, or you can plant greens that they love, an edge on it, and they'll go over there first, because it's kind of like me. If there's a coconut cream pie, homemade coconut cream pie over here, I'm going for that homemade coconut cream pie instead of my eggplant. But anyway, that's the trap crop. You're using it to trap that pest to keep it off your other crop. The other ones are, you might be planting, anybody plant marigolds in their garden of tomatoes, and you have to realize it has to be the old heirloom marigold. It can't be the hybrid ones, because the hybrid ones, they bred the smell out of them. And that's the thing you're looking for. And it's that French Targhee marigold that they use for that. And it reseeds as an heirloom. So you're going to get it coming back year after year, and it's great. But it's got to be that awful smelling marigold. So can't be those new pretty big leaf or big blooming ones. So that would be another example of companion planting, just to help cut down on pests. And we also plant flowers. I have flowers in containers around my containers, and I'm encouraging pollinators in my garden, because we know how important it is to have those pollinators there, because they're the ones getting, so we can get your cucumbers, or we can get your squash. We have those bees flying in there all the time. I have bees myself. I have 3 hives, so I really haven't had a problem with that, but I do keep flowers around my vegetable garden just to attract them into there to do their job. Okay, another way to control pests, anybody use frost-free covers and stuff like that? A mesh, cheesecloth, just to keep pests off of their plants? This is one way of doing it. The only thing is, if it is a squash by any chance, you got to have a pollinator in there to get that squash. If you're doing this, that means you get your little paintbrush out and you're actually doing the work of the bees. So you're going to become an artist and start pollinating plants. And y'all know the difference between a male flower and a female flower, right? You just can't look at them and tell. I mean, you can look at them and tell, but you have to look at the base of it and tell. So if there's a little miniature fruit or vegetable behind that bloom, that is a female bloom. If there's nothing behind it, it is a male. So again, usually males come out first for about 2 weeks, because we get the call, I've got squash, I've got cucumbers, and I'm not getting anything. So we ask them, is it a male or female? And they said, how am I supposed to tell? Look under its petal or something? And I said, well, that's one way, because there's female parts of the flower and male parts. And the easiest way to do it is just look behind that bloom. If it's blank, that means it's a male. And so they said, well, what am I going to do with all these males? Have y'all ever had dipped squash blossoms? Fried, delicious. Try it. And you only need one male is all it takes to fertilize the other one, but you're going to have tons. So that's one way of doing it. But again, usually they come on first. Then the females will come mix, half and half after that, just so there's enough pollen source and females to pollinate back and forth, just so you'll get the pollination, you'll get your vegetables. Okay, number of plants per square foot. Again, pay attention to how big this gets. Zucchini will get huge, meaning, like I plant one zucchini in a protein tub. It is this tall and this big around. So you can imagine if you're doing tight spacing, that's not good for that plant, because there's no air movement getting through there. You're going to have fungi problems. You're going to have your fruit rotting, because it's not getting that air movement. So spacing is very important. So pay attention to how big that plant's going to get, because we're going to use the wind to help cut down on the pathogens from those fungus. Also, crop rotation. You as master gardeners know how important it is to rotate, rotate, rotate. And we all kind of have to learn the hard way. It takes one time, and I've learned the hard way too. This is before I joined Extension. This is when I was growing up. I had a cute potager garden, vegetable garden. It was just a cute garden. It had archways and those tutors, and I put my tomatoes on these beautiful archways just so I can walk down the alley of arches and I could pick my tomatoes underneath. Well, that only worked 3 to 4 years for me. I developed Southern Blight in it, and it took 5 years for me to grow another tomato, pepper, or eggplant in that area, just because I had to work on it to do it. I had to switch to going that stuff in containers because it was in the ground. And we all know the kissing cousins, right? The kissing cousins are your tomatoes, your eggplant, your potato, your peppers. Those are kissing, they're in the same family. The same diseases affect them. So if you're planting your garden, when you rotate it, you rotate them as a group. So you're planting them as a group in your garden section, and then you're rotating that group every year. Don't plant now we get people that do it over and over again, it's just not hit them yet. But when it hit, it's bad. So just rotate from year one. So again, think about that. On tubs, whatever I'm growing tomatoes or peppers in, I have a piece of duct tape. And it's got a P on it for pepper, it's got a T on it for eggplant, it's got E on for eggplant, T on for tomato, don't know my alphabet. But anyway, it's on that piece of duct tape with a permanent marker. I know next year that in those tubs, because it's too expensive to replace that topsoil, it's not topsoil, it's Pro Mix with a little bit of topsoil and manure. It's too expensive to replace those, so I rotate. So whatever had a P, T, or whatever on it, it gets a squash or a zucchini or another vegetable that I like, greens or something growing in it, lettuce. It's growing in there. It's just not that Solanaceae family. That is how I rotate my containers. I don't have to move them around. I just plant a different thing, and as long as I knew what grew in it the year before. And it's easy enough to do. So again, crop rotation is going to cut down on a lot of your diseases. And again, we're thinking about that. The less we have to spray and cure those, the better off we're going to be. So, saving vegetable seeds. So we have a lot, and I am into heirloom varieties of seeds, and I do like them. I have a few things I grow up that my great-grandparents grew in their garden. And we have a pole bean I like. It's a little short pole bean, I like it. But I inherited that from my great-grandparents, and I plant it every year, and I save seed from it. But a lot of us, if we have a nematode problem in our ground, or we had southern blight, or we had a blight problem, or we had, tobacco mosaic virus problem, we know that there are tomato plants out there that have, the little alpha characters above the tomato when you buy it? That means they're resistant to those diseases. So it might be where we have to use those just so we're going to get some type of tomato in our garden, because our heirloom varieties are susceptible to all those diseases. And if you have them in the ground, and with me, I can't grow a garden without tomatoes. I'm going to have them. I might have to resort to that variety of tomato just so I get tomatoes. And again, sometimes we have to do that. So do that if that's the case. Also, when I'm picking those, I'm drying out, saving my seed, I actually, you need to let that pod mature as far as possible, because that seed is going to have the DNA and everything, and we need stuff in it for it to be a good seed. We don't want it to be a 75% germability. We want 95 to 100% germability, and that means aging out the seed. So for instance, anybody grow purple Cherokee tomatoes in here and they're saving their seeds from it? We let that tomato on that vine as long as possible, where it actually starts rotting, and we're picking it and putting it on top of a paper towel and letting it do that way. It doesn't look good, but we do that because we know our seeds are more mature and we're going to have a higher germination viability on those seeds. So again, pay attention to that. And I store all my seeds, once they dried out, in paper bags, and I put them in the freezer. Okay, mulches. Mulch is mulch everything. I'm a firm believer in mulch. And the reason for it, and I want to caution you, I'm talking about biodegradable mulch. I'm not talking about dyed mulch. I'm not talking about that rubber tire mulch. I'm talking about real mulch. So again, use it because it actually, it manages soil moisture. It cuts down on the weeds. It actually breaks down and builds up the soil every year. I actually use a straw, not hay, straw. There's a difference for those people who are not brought up on a farm. Hay is what we feed to livestock, and it will have Bermuda seed in it, and Bermuda is the antichrist for any garden. So we don't want to encourage seed in there coming up. I use a wheat straw, and the only seed I have to worry about in that wheat straw coming up is wheat itself. Wheat itself is easy to pull up, lay back down on the ground. You're just mulching back again. So it's not hard to do, and then that wheat straw breaks down every year, and it just builds up the soil. So it's great. It's amazing what it'll do. It also prevents erosion. We don't have to worry about you losing our good topsoil. And again, always be careful and I should change this. I put hay in here, and that's a mistake. That should be straw treated with an herbicide, not hay. So cross that out. I don't want y'all thinking about hay. Do not put hay anywhere in your garden. I can't believe I did that. But anyway, think about that. Do not put hay. Straw. Okay, watering your garden. We need to conserve moisture. So, all about sustainability. We have so many people watering with broadcast overhead. Well, when you get moisture on plant leaves, and it doesn't dry out by nightfall, you're going to get fungus among us. It's going to happen. Especially now, we're not getting cool nights. It's hot, humid nights, and it grows rampant. So we do not encourage overhead watering. Now, if it rains, there's nothing you can do about it. It's Mother Nature. And usually when it rains in Mother Nature, it's cooler weather. It's cool weather. It's not hot, muggy weather like you would if you were artificially watering it. So again, no overhead watering, especially at nightfall. If you're going to do it early in the day, just in time for the water to run off or dry off those leaves. Also, I encourage drip systems because those drip systems work great. You can get them at any home box store and lay them out yourself. You got little emitter stems to it. And so you can actually put that little emitter to your pepper plant or your tomato plant or your okra plant or your squash plant. It works out very well. You're conserving that water. We have a lot of people that do rain barrels, and they're actually doing rain barrels that way. And they're using the water out of it to water their garden. Okay, again, you could use a rain gauge. Usually a garden itself, it's going to have at least 1 inch of water per week. And when we say 1 inch, we want a deep watering because we know how important it is to have the roots go down deep. If you're doing shallow watering, all you're doing is bringing the roots up to the surface. The surface is hot for these temperatures, it's cooking the roots. You're actually watering double the time. So we water less frequency, but we water more, so it's deeply done. Now, if you're doing a container, that rule doesn't apply. Those containers are going to dry out, and as I've told you before, I'm watering mine twice a day with this high heat. So again, think about that, but drip system would be the ideal thing to have because you're conserving that moisture. The only moisture that you need is going to the plant. Okay, so factors affecting water needs. Water loss from plant is greater on clear, hot, windy days. That makes sense because the wind is drying out the plant. It's kind of like us going out in the sun and the wind. We do something to help our skin. So the same thing is for plants. Also, mulches, as I said before, will help with that. They cool those root systems. They help protect it. Plus, they can help conserve that moisture. Again, with UA, as Master Gardeners, you know we have all types of publications out there. Pick tomatoes, pick corn, whatever. I tell people just go to our website in the search box, type what they want. It's easier for me to do that, pull up what I need. And the great thing about our publications, there's a Q&A section at the back sheet, and it more or less lists like problems that people might be having, and this is other ways to resolve those issues. So again, use that resource. All right, any questions that we have? Okay, in the back. I'm sorry? Oh, the question was protein tubs. Do you know a farmer? Get to know a farmer. Okay. If you know a farmer, they're going to have it because they put them out for their cattle. I'm going to say cattle because there's more cattle than sheep in the area. So they will be feeding it to their cattle. The cattle they come in mineral tubs and they come in protein molasses tubs. So they'll either have a mineral tub out there or they'll have both protein and mineral out there. They'll lick them clean, and most of the farmers don't know what to do with them, and they're putting them in the landfills. So this is one way that we can recycle them, and they do great. I've been growing them here. Well, I've been growing it before I moved transferred here, but for the past 10 years, they're excellent. And I mentioned before, mine on top of concrete slab. I don't have to worry about grass mowing around it. I don't have to worry about weed seeds getting into it. It works out very well. And if I need to move them, to space them as they grow for more air movement, I just get a dolly, because my tomato plants are huge. A refrigerator dolly, which I have one at the house, and I move them over if I need to. So it works out really well. I had a question right here in the orange.
What is the story on the jumping worms?
Oh, the jumping worms. Okay, we have a thing on them. You're correct. They are coming in. And now the state plant board knows. They wanted us to inform them. If somebody called and said, I have them here, let us know. That and the hammerhead. Or hammerhead. Yep, okay. Yes. So those are the two. But now they know where they are. They're already here. So actually, if it's my choice, I'll take the jumping over the hammerhead. The hammerhead's one's got that slimy coating on it. It hurts the earthworms. Also, this suggests you wear gloves. You're messing with them. But also, the hammerheads love moist areas, shady areas. If you get in a sunny area like a vegetable garden, you don't have to worry about it because they don't like it. It's too hot. So, but they encourage you to kill them when you see one. Kill it. Don't chop it because it will start another worm. It says kill it. Kill it, puts pour salt on it, they say. But here's my deal. I don't want people going crazy with salt. Salt can be bad, especially out in the yard or the dirt. And we don't want to do that. But if it's on the patio or something, or bring them to the patio or whatever and kill them that way. But make sure you kill the complete worm.
I carry a canister of water with some pine salt.
Oh, Okay, great. Go for it. One way of doing it. Yes.
So you're using wheat straw. Is there any concern with herbicide being in wheat straw or is it okay?
Okay, so the question was about herbicide in wheat straw. Here's the deal. Wheat is really grown in the wintertime, winter months, and then it's harvested like in May. So usually we do not have a weed problem in wheat because of that cool temperatures. Now I'm not gonna say there's not gonna be a problem with it, but generally there's not because of the time it grows and we don't have to worry about it. And so it's never been an issue in the past so far. So again, now we also have people that say they grow organic wheat because a lot of them are not using a fungicide on some of the diseases. A fungicide is different from an herbicide. So again, they could have a fungicide treatment, but that's not what's going to hurt you. It's the herbicide that you worry about. And usually they don't have to worry about herbicide because the wheat's growing at cooler temperatures. Okay? Yes. Oh, yes, Sheila.
Would you tell us one more time what the kissing cousins are?
Okay. The kissing cousins are the whole family that's in the Solanaceae family. So eggplant, tomato, pepper, potato. If you ever look at the bloom on these, they all look alike. So those are your kissing cousins that you need to keep together when you're planting the garden, just so you rotate them as a group. If you're planting tomatoes on this end, you're planting peppers on this end, and eggplant in the middle, you just kind of messed up your plan. Put them all together and just rotate them as a group through the garden. Those are your kissing cousins. Okay? Yes?
Is this your house plant up there?
No, that's not my house plant. That is a weed from this guy. That's that spurge that we were talking about. That's the main turf.
Randy, do you think a pre-emergent herbicide this fall would take care of that?
No, I don't think it's on the list for it to take care of. I wish it was, but I don't think prostate or any kind of spurge is on a pre-emerge. I didn't thought about it. You said it's a toupee. It's flat. Good work. Any other questions? Oh, yes, Claudette.
Pronounce that name again that you told me was in Roundup.
Oh, okay. Claudia was talking about glyphosate, the active ingredient. And the reason why I have to caution people is we did a What's Up Wednesday for agents. And our new agents, usually when you had Roundup was strictly glyphosate. It was the active ingredient in it. Well, Roundup, it's getting a bad rap. So, and Claudia's right about this. So now when they have the Roundup trademark, Roundup's the trademark name, they're using other things in it, but it's not glyphosate. They think when we say Roundup, because that's usually what everybody knows as glyphosate, but it's not the case anymore. So it's got other active ingredients. It's not going to do that same killing power that you have. So again, and I'm sorry, a lot of you are going to say, oh, Roundup's bad. We still recommend it in our MPs. And if it's used correctly at the correct rates, and you're wearing the right safety gear when you're spraying it, you should be okay. Okay? So, all right? And Roundup is my friend on the farm. I can't function without it. I have to use it because I do have stuff that gets out of control. But again, I'm using it correctly at the correct rate. I'm not like my dad thinking more is better, and I'm pouring a gallon of that in a gallon of water. That's not the case. Any other questions? Yes, in the back.
How do you feel about topping tomatoes?
How do I feel about what tomatoes?
Topping tomatoes.
Oh, topping tomatoes. Is that the same thing you're calling about suckering, desuckering? Or is that different? Okay. Okay, so his question was about topping tomatoes. So on tomatoes, it all depends. Y'all know the difference between an indeterminate tomato and a determinate tomato? I'm seeing yeses. Am I seeing any no's?
Go ahead and tell.
Okay. All right. So, determinate tomatoes. Those tomatoes, it's on the tag when you buy it. Those are tomatoes that have a genetic form. They are known to come up, bloom, and produce their fruit in a certain section of time, usually like a 2-week span. You're getting all your fruit on this plant. Because it was bred for people who are doing canning and stuff like that, because they don't want to pull out their equipment, because it's a job to can. They don't want to pull it out every 30 days to do tomatoes, where they save tomatoes. They want those tomatoes coming on at one time. So it's bred for that, or for marketing. They want to sell a big load of tomatoes. Indeterminate, think of indeterminate as indefinite. It's continually producing blooms and growth all the way till frost. So it's going to continue to grow. You're going to plant your tomato in April, And then you're gonna hopefully get tomatoes like in June, start getting tomatoes, and you want those Junes going to your frost. You're collecting them from now on. Well, that's an indeterminate tomato. So indeterminate continue to grow, they get tall. I raise indeterminate. Mine are 7 feet tall now, and you're right. I have the option of topping, and I can top. So what I do is, when we have high temperatures, when you're getting 90, 92 and above, that would be a good time to top, because I know whatever blooms I'm getting, it aborts the bloom because it doesn't like the heat. I know I'm not wasting tomatoes because the bloom is not there to get pollinated and to have a tomato. So if I want to do it, that is when I do it, just to keep it. Tomatoes will break out from axillary buds, will break out new growth from the side. So is that going to answer your question, sir? Okay. Yes?
So my question is anybody in Arkansas actually doing any real vertical gardening?
Oh, no. I can't think of anybody now. But a lot of people, I think it's great. When you say vertical, you mean like pallet planting, or are you just talking about walls?
There's walls, there's a company called Green Stalks that
Oh.
does, I have an herb farm.
Oh,
and
cool.
I can grow 30 herb plants in a 1.5 by 1.5 space.
Right.
Going vertical as opposed to loads of raised beds.
So are you doing hydroponic?
No, I haven't
Okay.
gotten there yet.
Okay.
So the thing is though, it cuts down on the pests tremendously
Yeah.
as well by going vertical instead of staying
On the ground.
down low.
Right. That's
So I
one
was
way.
just wondering if anybody was doing
We don't have anything at the farm, the university farm that way. It's a good idea. I do know that, it's not Boast, what's on Mississippi? It's on Mississippi Avenue. But the kids there are raising basil for the market, for the vegetable. What is it? Thank you. That's it, Access School. They're doing a great job. They have these tall columns, and they're tall, and they're doing it hydroponically, and they're harvesting basil, and it's beautiful. But they're doing it vertically because they get a lot of basil off of that. But again, it's hydroponic. If yours are in the ground, the soil, how are you making sure it gets water?
They're not in the ground.
They're in the tube or whatever.
Yeah, you pour the water down from the top and it goes all the way down.
Right, so my thing is, how do you keep it evenly watered? Because the top's gonna get a lot, the bottom is what I'm worried about.
It works better than you think.
Okay, because like when I do a giant strawberry pot, the same thing, it's got little notches around it. I actually stick a PVC pipe in the middle with holes in it, and that's what I feel, because the water goes out all different levels from top to bottom. And that's the only way I get a strawberry pot to do well. So that's what I do for it. I didn't know if it's the same format that you're using. Okay. But yeah, you're right. I don't know if anybody's actually doing it with the growing media other than water. So, but it's a good idea. It's a way to save lives. Yes.
Hey Randy, I'm behind you.
Oh, thank you.
Bruce Schrader at the Villa Farms, he does vertical gardening.
Oh, great. Thank you.
So, and I have a question about asparagus. I inherited 30-year-old asparagus crowns.
Oh, wow.
And so, but I put them too close together and I've got fern everywhere and I've got fence around the fern now. And I need to put a big layer of compost in.
Okay.
Is it too early for me to cut back that fern, even though it seems to be dying back?
Yeah, okay, if it's dying out going brown or yellow, I guess I should say, you can cut it back. If it's green, that's what's feeding the crown. How long have they been planted?
2 years.
Okay, good. So yes, if it's going brown, you can clip it off.
And if it's going brown and it also has the red berries.
Yeah, the red berries are the females. And usually, lately, Martha Washington's really the only female they actually use for asparagus, female plant. But the other ones, are male, like Purple Giant, Jersey Giant. Mainly, have you ever bought asparagus crowns? They'll say male crowns. Martha's really a good producer, but she doesn't have giant spears. The males tend to have bigger spears than Martha, but she's a good standby. But usually the females are producing the berries. So if you have female out there, you see berries.
And I guess my question was, if you see the berries, is it mature and then you cut it off as well?
Yeah, so if the foliage is already brown on it, that berries are done what it's going to do. So you can cut off and let it go back to the ground. Now with asparagus, to actually apply a layer of manure, composted manure every year. Are you doing it in the fall?
I did not, but I've
Yeah.
got to get it low enough that I can do that.
Yeah, so we just added, my parents, every year we put in, actually on theirs we put 4 to 6 inches on the top. It just rots down. It's composted manure, it's not straight. So we just do that, and again, they have a healthy bed of asparagus. Yes. No, it's in a raised bed. It's in a 6-inch timber bed border. And the only reason I do that because I want to make sure that it's contained, and plus it's easy for me to lay that manure and let it rot over and over again. Now at the JDC garden, it's in an 18-inch tall raised bed, and it's producing a lot. And it's only been there it's on its 4th year. This year's 4th year. It is absolutely fantastic. Yes.
One more question.
Yes.
Because I have some old plants too.
Mm-hmm.
Can I move those into a raised bed?
Yeah, you can. You sure can, and I would probably do that in the early spring, well, like February. I would probably dig them up and do them then. And then make sure you have that bed prepped and ready to go when you transplant them in. Now, pay attention to the crowns on them. You know how critical it is that middle part of that crown. When you move it, make sure you get a wide enough area for that.
Because my crowns come up so early, sometimes I'm missing things like that.
Oh, okay. Well, usually I'm thinking they're doing that around February, beginning of February. So, because usually, here's the deal. Once you have your asparagus bed, nobody ever transplanted again. Now, you might have to move it, but that's the reason why it's very important you decide where it's going to be, because it's going to be there for life, hopefully. All right? Is that it?
That's good.
All right, thank you. And thank y'all for having me. And I'll see y'all at conference.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
Okay, we do have a few, very few, but a few business items to take care of, and we'll try to run through those pretty quickly here. So first up is the plant sale. Claudette, where are you? Where are you? Yeah, just go there. Stand by.
Okay, here.
Okay, did it fall? All right, everybody. I missed last month's meeting, and I just wanted to thank everybody for coming out and helping us at the plant sale. And for any of you that did not come to the plant sale, we really would like to have you come out and be a part of it. It's a great event. We raise a lot of money. We raise a little over $32,000 and some change, and that helps go scholarships and a lot of other things that we do for our city. And also, I just want to thank everybody for your support for coming out and being a part of the plant sale. And also, the state conference that Randy talked about, for anybody who is interested, we really would love to have you guys come and be volunteers for the conference. And if anybody has any vendors that they might want to suggest, or any sponsors that I can go, and I passed out a lot of donations. I've passed out a lot of donation slips, and now I'm going to start going begging people for money. So thank you again. I appreciate all your support for the plant sale. And we'll be starting back up in December. If any of you are interested in participating, come and see. Stop.
Let me back up a minute. I've skipped over our officer report. So Elaine, minutes?
Thought you forgot.
No.
Is this on?
It is. You just need to chop.
Okay, I'll chop. The minutes are up to date. I've got the board minutes finished. They'll go out in our next publication. And I want to read a thank you note that was sent to Sherry We would like to thank the Coleus Fund for recommending our Hope Garden to be a recipient of the friend and also of the fund, and also to thank you and the executive board for approving the very generous donation. We will use the funds diligently to continue our work feeding those in need through Project Hope with the fresh produce we grow. We have had very little outside funding in the past, so this is really great for us to have this gift. Gratefully yours, Susan Coding and Judy Deere.
All right, next up, our finances, our treasurer Denise.
Okay, so the June reports will be sent out in a newsletter or something. Yeah, something like that, constant contact. So if you want to look over those, that would be great. And so just ignore what is in the newsletter this week, because those are the May reports. And so what happened when I gave you the May report is that after I said those numbers, it just hit me that I have done something really wrong. So I figured out that if you carry forward the wrong numbers 4 times, it really makes it a warped total. So if you were wondering about that back then, that's the answer to that. So when you get the new June reports, look those over, and also the income and expense report will give you like the budget, and it'll give you what has been spent so far as of June 30th. And then what's left in your budget for these different committees. So, and if you have any questions, give me a call. I may not have the answer, but we can look into it. So I think that's what you need to know. I don't know, shall I give them some information? Or look? Okay, so just look, yeah, just look. Thank you.
All right, next up, Jody for our mentors, CART and so forth.
So we have 8 Master Gardeners, new Master Gardeners that have completed all of their hours. Let me read their names and then let's give them a round of applause. We have Carol Arrington, Debbie Bogle, Katie Ann Haley, Laura Romilly, Linda Riddle, Annette Sherrill, Ramona Slick, and Rebecca Tutton. There are, however, some of you who have not put in hours yet. I know some are still struggling with the system. I will reach out to you individually to make sure that you know how to enter hours, and we'll work with you to do that. In the meantime, keep entering hours, and it's been fun. We had 27 Master Gardeners who attended the Annuals to Perennials on Tuesday with Jason Reeves. He presented a variety of great garden plants, and if you're a new Master Gardener or mentor who didn't get his handout, I do have some extras, and it is a very comprehensive list of things that do well in our region. And then finally, I've met with the committee chairs of Langston Alumni Garden, Lake Hamilton Greenhouse, and Habitat for Humanity. We were able to fill out their worksheets for CART, but pending our new county agent, we'll hold those sponsorship meetings until when we have an agent assigned.
Thanks, Jody. All right, now back to unfinished business. One other item is county fair. Shar?
I'll just stand up here and talk to you very much.
Just talk loudly. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
So look for Sign Up Genius. Trish will be sending that out to sign up for volunteers for the county fair. The county fair is September 12th through the 16th. However, if you're interested in participating in the contest this year, which is scarecrows, and we want you to, since our theme is sustainability, we want you to reuse things in your home. Don't go out shopping for stuff. You need to bring your scarecrows on Monday, September 11th, along with any plants or vegetables that you want to enter into the contest. Monday, September 11th is the setup day for exhibitors and bringing your plants and scarecrows. If you don't know how to use Sign Up Genius, send me an email or a text, because we all need volunteers. And some of you, John, just mentioned to me he needs hours. So if you need hours, the county fair is a good place to get them. Let's see, what else? We do have a meeting on Tuesday at 1 o'clock at the depot. So if you're interested in volunteering, please come and participate. And if you have any questions, since this is my first year, talk to Pam and Cheryl.
Thank you, Charlotte. Okay, on to new business. We only have one item there, and that's the annual survey. You all should have gotten that this week via email, in a constant contact email. So I encourage you all to fill those out. It doesn't take more than about 5 minutes at the max. Just go ahead and fill them out, submit them at least by the end of the month. But as soon as you open it, just do it, and then it's done. Okay, thank you. Announcements. The Sow and Till table, I hope each of you had a chance to look at that. All about trees this time. And of course they have a drawing, so hopefully you dropped your name in the bucket over there. Sunshine. All right, another quick announcement. P&G conference is here in Hot Springs this year, August 4th and 5th. Again, you should have seen an announcement and a registration for that. I think the cutoff is the 28th of this month, so please go ahead and register if you want to attend P&G. And remember, if this is your first time to attend ever, Garland County Master Gardeners will cover the cost of your registration. Just go ahead and register, bring the receipt to us, and we will pay for your attendance on your first time. $30. All right, a couple of other announcements that have come up. When we leave today, the Elks would like us to stack all the chairs this time, but remember, only 8 high. But they don't want any chairs left out. And last but not least, if a lot of your plants are going to seed right now, the decorating committee for the state convention, they would like us to save our seeds. They're going to do some sort of a decoration with seeds. So as you see things in your yard going to seed, please collect them, put them in an envelope or something, save them, and bring them in. We'll call for them at the appropriate time.
Sure, do they need to be labeled with how much vegetable or plant they are?
No, it's just strictly for decoration, so you don't need to label them or anything. Okay? Any other announcements?
Garlic.
Oh, the garlic. Over here, there's garlic. If anybody wants garlic to plant or to eat, we have some up here on this table. Junan?
We are going to need to know what kind of seeds they are, so we'll know how to plant it in like a sunny environment or.
Okay.
Just label as to what they are.
All right. Stand corrected. There you go. Label the seeds. All right. Anything else? Oh. All right. We are adjourned. Thank you.